Welcome to the JAMODI podcast. We are all surrounded by amazing coaches and leaders. So let's get an inside look at not just what they do, but how they do what they do. After all, becoming the best versions of ourselves is JAMODI, just a matter of doing it. Coaches, the JAMODI podcast is powered by Shoot 360. The future of basketball has arrived in Dallas-Fort Worth. Shoot 360 combines the latest sports technology with the fundamentals of basketball skill development. The result is a one-of-a-kind video game-like basketball program designed to improve your shooting, dribbling, and passing. Visit shoot360dfw.com to learn more and register for your free 1-hour workout evaluation. Shoot 360, the future of basketball is here.
You know what's crazy is I just told the story the other day. So I get the Valpo, whatever, and so I still have to go home and pack the house and move, whatever. And there's a bunch of really good stories about that. But I get to the office, and so at this point, and you know me well, but you might not know me from this perspective. Like, I'd rather do things. I'd rather have the least amount of movement and get the most done, as opposed to having to go. That's why I've always lived super close. Like, Baylor was the furthest I've ever lived from any coaching job in my life. But it didn't matter back then because we were there all the time anyways. Yeah. But so I was at Valparaiso, and coach said, "Hey, I got a room for you." As a matter of fact, I sent the key back to him about 5-6 years ago. I used to carry it in that book that I like to read. I said to coach, and coach is like, "Hey, I got a room for you." And it's great because he's a great poker player. It's back when, Texas Hold'em was just getting started in 2003. Your World Series of Poker was big. It was just kind of coming along, He's like, "You're great." And he goes to the Chicago to play. So he's never there at night. And he's got a bedroom for you. Yeah, it's free. Just, whatever. I said, "Coach, I really appreciate that. But there's no sense in me driving 7 minutes to be by myself. Like that doesn't make any sense. I'm good." So I kept my bags in the locker room, and I slept. You remember the Seinfeld when he worked for the Yankees and he slept under?
Under the desk. Yeah.
So I slept under my desk every night. But here's the greatest part, Matt. This is how you and I began our life. This is how you and I kind of started to, what's the word? Subliminally. This is how you and I started. And so every night, if you remember back then, this is 2003, I was sitting there, and I would lay on the ground, and I had a TV up in the corner, and I would lay there and I'd watch ESPN from 11 to 12. And then at 12 was the Iron Chef. And I would flip it to the Food Channel. I put on the Iron Chef, and I'd always end up falling asleep. In the Iron Chef, you remember he had that, it used to, you don't remember this, but this lid used to come up with their secret ingredients, and all this fog would come up, It was a big deal, right? However, if you remember back then, that was June. So there we are in June, right? So you know where I'm going with this now. So every night I'm laying on the floor, and I'm watching Baylor, and I'm watching Baylor, and I'm watching Baylor. Every single night I'm watching Baylor. And like the sign, I don't know if you remember it. Remember the sign that said, it was real small. If you came to where the flags were in the Farrell, on the left, so our offices were on that corner.
Yep.
On the left was a small sign that said men's basketball offices. Mm-hmm. And USA Today put a picture of it one time, but you would see it as like B-roll, right?
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, I've told this story, like it was like embedded in my brain. Like it was embedded in my brain. And like, it was like when we got the job, I was like, man, I'm going to go. Like, and I know that sounds quirky.
Well, I wonder how many people like you were watching all of that stuff unfold, watching the news, but instead of looking at it as like, man, I'm wondering if that's one day a place where I could be, or I'm not saying that's exactly what you thought, but I would imagine most people saw that and go like, golly, thankful I'm not there, and thankful I don't have to go through that. And then
professional suicide.
Who is going to take that? I think that's
suicide.
Yeah.
And you're watching, you're like, oh my goodness, these, as coaches, these other dudes, like these poor kids, like this is brutal, and you're going through it.
Yeah.
And so, what's crazy is when we interviewed for the job at Valpo, a couple things that really spurred me about Coach was, number one, he had a desire. Would you call it an aim?
Yep.
Is that you said?
An aim. Yep.
He had an aim, and we all know that if you throw darts or you throw hatchets, right, your biggest bang for your buck is the center, right? So you got to build the center and build out, right? He had an aim. Like he told me, he's like, yeah, I want to be a Power 5, or I don't think he said Power 5, high major. I'd like to be a high major coach someday. And in my brain, I'm thinking, I'm 38. You know, I just was at Clemson for 5 years and 2 championships. Maryland won 1, Duke won 1. And so like the ACC was like big time. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, like he's not just satisfied. Like, I'm taking over for my dad. I'm going to stay here for 30 years. Not that they're bad with that. And I actually was kind of excited because
maybe the stability in that,
stability, and even though you're not making the same kind of money, so to speak, it didn't matter, because like everything else in life, you got to take the ups and downs and the ebbs and flows, and then you just got to make things happen the way they're going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And so when he said that to me during the interview, I thought, that's pretty cool. And then the other thing that was really important when he interviewed me was he was so like inquisitive. Like he wanted to know, like, and you know how coaches, like, he wanted to know so much stuff. You know, he's the one that taught me the saying that, you know, it's always better to get information than give, and always understand that information is your number one commodity, right? And so like he was like, you know, bam, 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 bam. And you think like, how does all this translate to what you're doing, how you're doing it, and the way in which you're going about it? And I told Coach in the interview, I said, Coach, listen, because I am older and I have been around there, I do have some people. And so I really think it'd be in our best interest if we go to the pumps clinic in California. And you'll love this. The title of the clinic, and I was able to go only because Coach Chiat and Coach Duncan were really close with the Pump Brothers. And so that's the only reason why they let me go. Hey, man, let some schmuck go to that, you know, but the clinic is called It's All About Relationships. It's all about relationships. And I tell another story, which we're going 50 million directions, but there's another story about, and we tell our guys this all the time, like, it's okay to disagree. It's not okay to burn a bridge.
That's good.
And Coach Moon is a good example. When we got to Wyoming, he wanted me to stay and be the assistant. He was going to pay Kerry a ton of money to be the cheerleading coach. I was going to stay with Steve McLean and be his assistant. And I'm like, Coach, I'm going to the ACC. Like, I'm not staying. Like, I'm going to the ACC. And he was furious. This was in 1998. Furious, Matt. Well, guess who the AD was that hired me at the University of North Florida in 2009? Same guy. So dots on a map. But it's also what you do with them. So I said, Coach, you got to go with this, right? And so we went, and there's a lot of good stories about it. But one of the ones that's as important is it was the weekend of August 8th, 9th, and 10th. Let me make sure. 2003, yeah. It was the weekend of August 8th, 9th, and 10th. Does that ring a bell? That's when the news broke.
That Coach Drew was coming?
No.
Oh, what?
Broke that A-Bar had recorded that.
Was it that late? I thought that was in June, but yeah.
No. It was August. Yeah. It was. So we got there, and like I'm telling Coach, you'd be you'd be amazing for this. And so met with a head on. Well, before that, so we're sitting there, and John Wooden's going to speak. And we're sitting there, and it's Coach. No, let's see, let me get it right. Yeah, I think it's Coach, Tim Floyd, and me. Or it's me, Tim Floyd, and Coach. Whatever. And Wooden's going to speak. I think Ben Howland just got done, and Wooden's going to speak. And Coach Tim Floyd says, no, remember now, dots on the map. It's all about relationships. Well, who did Tim Floyd coach? Bryce Drew. So so we're kicking it and talking. And he said, man, Baylor, like, blah, 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 blah. And Tim Floyd says, yeah, I can help you. And Coach is like, how's that? And he said, my college roommate is married to Kim Mulkey. And so, like, all that stuff started presenting itself. And so it just, yeah, that's the thing that really impressed me about Coach is that, Coach was always about that aim.
Yeah.
But
man, it must have happened pretty quick. If that weekend is when A-Bar, all that stuff came out, or you guys moved pretty fast after that.
I think it was August 6th is when the thing came out.
Yeah.
We were at Pumps that weekend, and then we did the press conference on, let's see, that's Sunday. So that'd be Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday the 21st. However, it got shut down when we thought it was rolling. It got shut down. And then it came back. Which is crazy because they something went awry. And then we got coached to Chicago, and then we came down. And it's just, there's, and of course we all met at the baseball facility on the mound.
They won't even let us meet in the gym. Like,
well, that's because
we're so bad. We don't.
So we landed the plane, and Marlene, yeah, Marlene, I believe, wonderful human being, and she's like, "There's our hangar right over there," and in my mind, I'm like, "Okay, why aren't we going to the hangar?" And she goes, "You see all them cars over there? That's all the media and all that kind of. We're going down there." And we jumped in her black SUV. And side note, Bryce and I were really hungry, and Kelly was pregnant with Mackenzie. We didn't know. I had put all my bags in the toilet, on the plane, and she had to go to the bathroom, the whole time. I didn't know she was pregnant. I wouldn't have put my bags there. Poor thing had to fly the whole way. But Bryce and I, she's like, "You guys need anything, whatever?" We stayed at the Hilton. And do you need anything, whatever? And Bryce and I, like, we'd like to grab a bite real quick. So we went to Denny's, and then she took us to the Bears.
Nice.
And it was like 1:45-ish. I remember it like it was yesterday, something like that. And so that means it was 1:45. So I guess it was 1:45 where Carrie was too in Valpo. I guess the same time frame. It might have been 2:45. I can't remember if there was a time difference. And I'm like, "Man, you ain't gonna play, 1:45. They got live bears. You ain't gonna play." So because it was obviously, with children, it makes that transition a little bit different. But that's how it started. Matt, that's how, laying underneath the desk and looking up and seeing that, and of course you and I, spend so much time together, And but it goes back to what you said before, like, are you aligning with that, with the way you're aligning with your perception? Is that your reality? And that's where now I didn't know until you wrote the book. I didn't know because you never shared that. We had come to your wedding, and it's the first time I ever had Maggiano's.
It was a good meal. It was a good meal.
But yeah, I'm with you. I understand that. But my point is, like, but you just don't know, and it's unfortunate.
But let me say this, because you've mentioned this a few times about, the player that you have sharing some things and how those other people then he connected with them. I think when you're in those moments, you just don't see how there could possibly be any good. How could God use this, what we're going through right now? And it's fair. Like, I think it's fair that young people 100%. Or anybody that's struggling, they can't see it then. But when you look back and you see those dots on the map, you see how God can use any of those tough times we go through, any of the tragedies. That's why John MacArthur, one of my favorite pastors, when people ask him, why do bad things happen to good people? He quickly responds with, first of all, there's no good people. I don't care how in the word you are, there's no good people. But after that, everything that happens in this world is for his glory. Well, how can you say that about these huge tragedies? It's for his glory, because everything can be ultimately worked out for our good. That doesn't mean it's the way we wanted it. So I wanted to play on and no offense to our team that year, we were 8-21. We were incredibly successful for what we had and what you guys. My senior year, that year with you, we were 8-21.
No, it said 17 on the back of the door, didn't it? Or did it say 15? Remember the number we put on the back of the door?
Well, we had that goal. Remember that? Yeah, we didn't hit that goal. We didn't hit that goal.
We thought to ourselves, man, we can't make that.
Coach Drew wanted to get one more win than we had the year before. But what I wanted to tell him when he had that, I want to raise my hand. I said, yeah, but we had future NBA players on that team. And in the Big 12, we couldn't even win 15 games. So like, I knew what we were walking into, and not that you guys didn't, obviously. I knew my teammates didn't know, my younger teammates who were walk-ons, or Carl Marshall, who just got there. Like, you guys don't understand what Kansas is about to bring. You know what this is, what Oklahoma with Kelvin Sampson is about to. But all that to say, it's
praise God, Texas A&M.
That was, yeah, we got them. But it's like, yeah, it took 2 overtimes the second time. But that wasn't my plan. Like, I didn't want to be a part of that team. I wanted to be a part of the one I thought I was going to have, which is we're going to be a top 25 team. We're going to finish top 4 in the Big 12. Like, we're going to make a deep run.
Roberts, Lucas,
yeah, Tom, and then all of us were going to be seniors that were role players. But looking back now, man, I see the why, and I understand it's for his glory. And it doesn't mean that I obviously, like, I did a lot of things wrong and made a lot of bad choices, but thankfully, by the grace of God, being able to realize that and see it. But I think that's the thing. Like, why do bad things happen? It's because his glory can be shown through those.
It also goes back to what we said earlier too, is free will. At the end of the day, that's what every day is about.
Mm-hmm.
It's about decisions. I was telling you at the bottom of that thing we talked about with Kobe, the way we say it is, your attitude inspires your actions, which produce results. And all results, doesn't matter what you do, all results create some kind of a consequence.
Yep.
And when I speak about it, I was like, y'all know what the water cycle is. It's the same thing. Your attitude is a water cycle. It's going to give you an action. It's going to give you a result. It's going to give you a consequence. And after the consequence, new attitude. 10% what happens to you, 9% how you react, period. Like I was talking about, and I know this is kind of a different deal, but it goes back to what you're saying, your actions and all those kind of things. I can't remember who it was, and we shouldn't say his name, but I remember you had a problem with a roommate on the road, and I didn't understand that. Yeah, it just like, are you kidding me? Like, whatever. And I didn't correlate what that meant to your actions and the way they were trying to line up with your aim, which was trying to line up with us doing well and whatever that looked like. But the other day, when I had the last 1,600-point score and his fiance, I'm going to officiate their wedding in June at the house before he left to go to Poland to play pro. We had that same, we were just talking about funny stories and different stuff. And he was terrible against Florida State. He was terrible. And he had just met his now fiance's parents for the first time. And I mean, I was pissed. I'm like, you've got to be better than this. You've got to be more like I don't care about our parents, not in a bad way. You've got to be more accountable. You've got to be, whatever that coaches stuff, whatever. But he never told me.
Yeah.
Until he never even told me, like, later on, that team won a championship. Like, he never even told me that. Like, it would have been, a good time to kind of laugh about it or joke about it. But like, sometimes we want to be that person, but then there's those other factors that come into play. And then how do you deal with those factors? And what do you do with those factors? And they're taking you out of your alignment. And then where do you step up as a player? Where do you step up as a leader? Where do you step up as a man and say, no, like, this ain't working? Like, and so I think that's where a lot of teams, that have that word potential, what is it really? When at the end of the day, the teams that win championships are the best teams that can overcome adversity, period. Those are the teams that, like Davion was talking about it the other day, about Jared. And you could say, well, it's really not adversity, but it is adversity. Like, Jared could have been the biggest pig in the world and could have just done his thing and try to become this dude, that dude, and everything, but he allowed others to do what they do, and therefore everybody, like Coach Evans, one of our assistants, calls it Bubbalicious for everybody. I don't know if you remember Bubbalicious to go.
Oh, yeah.
Bubbalicious for everybody is what he calls it. But, Davion was talking about that the other day, that if Jared would have been more the other way, and now you get those two guys, and you know what happens with friction, there's fire. And so I think the teams that can overcome those particular deals and put their self aside, and our champion, we won 3 championships in 9 years. Like, and the third one was a completely different team in 4 years, which is hard to do. But when you do that, like, dudes are they're just so, they're just at a different level, of not only as players, but really as people, like their role or who I am. And, we say it like you say it, I'm sure, at the end of the day, be all league in your role. Like, when I was an assistant, and I'll proudly say it, I was one of the best in the country. It's not even close. And it wasn't because of any kind of intelligence. It was just because, like, that's what I wanted to be. That's who I wanted to be. And I wanted to do everything I could as an assistant, not worrying about whatever was next. And I was very fortunate because Carrie helped. Of course, I wanted to become a head coach and all those kind of things. Everybody.
But you weren't looking beyond where you are as something that, it's kind of funny. It's like, I don't think people realize or players especially, how much they can control what happens to them in the future by maximizing what they're doing in the moment.
That's another thing that Brady talked about. We actually talked about it this morning on the beach on the last day. So they're all themed. And today was road win day. And then we talked about, let's talk about the road. We have 7 new guys. Let's talk about the road. Like, what's the road? They went through the normal stuff. But you know what they didn't talk about, Matt? What you and I just talked about. I did. Now, nobody knows what you and I are talking about, but
yeah,
I did. I said, well, let me ask you a question. When you go to bed every night, who's in your room? Who's in your room? Who's in your room? Oh, you guys all got your own suites with a bathroom and all that, all that stuff that you never had. But, like, guess what happens when you're on the road? Like, flush early, flush often. Like,
yeah,
make sure you have and that's why, Charlie to this day, he'll tell you, Coach Melton, he'll tell you, like, Driscoll's, and I didn't do it purposefully, but, like, I showered, I got dressed, I was out of the room early. Like, that's just how I was. I was going and getting candy and Swedish fish and whatever it is I could get when guys were coming down and whatever. Like, that was just me. And sometimes I think it bothered Carrie, and sometimes I think it might have bothered, somebody else at whatever. But I wanted to make sure, like, the bus was going to be there and we had the gear and it wasn't like I was harping on people.
No, but your level of care was really high. Yeah.
But my point is, like, just like you were saying, like, sometimes you get thrown off though. And if you can't get pulled back in, and I just, it's just, and I don't want to say, well, it's life. It's whatever, because it is, But in the same breath,
as a coach, I think we have to acknowledge when our players are going through something that is real to them. Like, because that's not a big deal to us. Maybe what they're going through isn't a big deal to us, being older, understanding that they're going to be able to get through this and they'll be just fine. But it is big to them. But at the same time, having the balance of also helping them to get through that adversity in an appropriate way. Like not to piss and moan and be upset and let it ruin their day, but then also to acknowledge that, yeah, I get how you feel and this is real, what you're going through right now. I think that's maybe where we kind of take the coaching hat and we put a little bit more of the psychologist hat on and help them through that situation.
Thank you for checking out today's episode. Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast, share it with your fellow coaches, and find us on social media for what's coming up next on the JAMODI podcast. It's just a matter of doing it.